The historical figure of Jesus of Nazareth is central to Christianity, yet much of what is known about him comes from the canonical New Testament texts. While these writings are theological and spiritual in nature, scholars and historians have long examined extrabiblical sources, writings outside the Bible, for independent attestations of Jesus. These sources include Roman historians, Jewish writers, pagan critics, and even archaeological findings like graffiti. This study explores the most significant extrabiblical references to Jesus, analyzing their context, reliability, and contribution to historical Jesus research. By examining ancient sources ranging from Jewish history to Roman chronicles, we gain a fuller picture of how Jesus was remembered outside Christian tradition, and how his image evolved in the consciousness of diverse ancient communities. Flavius Josephus 37 AD to 100 AD. Flavius Josephus, a Jewish historian who defected to Rome during the First Jewish-Roman War, provides two crucial references to Jesus in his work Antiquities of the Jews, written around 93 to 94 AD. His accounts are especially valuable because Josephus was not a Christian, yet he lived shortly after the time of Jesus and wrote from a Jewish perspective. The Testimonium Flavianum, Antiquities 18.3.3. This passage is perhaps the most famous non-Christian reference to Jesus. Now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man. For he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as receive the truth with pleasure. He drew over to him both many of the Jews, and many of the Gentiles. He was the Christ. And when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men amongst us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him at the first did not forsake him. For he appeared to them alive again the third day. Scholars widely agree that this version of the text includes later Christian interpolations. A more likely authentic core might read, "Now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man. He was a doer of startling deeds, a teacher of people who received the truth with pleasure. He won over many Jews and many of the Greeks. When Pilate had condemned him to the cross, those who had first come to love him did not cease." This reconstructed version is supported by textual analysis and references in early church fathers such as Origen, who mention a less embellished account. The passage affirms that Jesus was a historical figure with a following, was crucified under Pilate, and had enduring influence. Reference to James, the brother of Jesus, Antiquities 20.9.1. A second, less disputed reference mentions James. "So he assembled the Sanhedrin of judges, and brought before them the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, whose name was James." This passage is significant because it affirms Jesus had a brother named James, refers to Jesus by the title, Christ, comes from a neutral source with no Christian agenda. Taken together, these two passages from Josephus offer strong historical confirmation of Jesus' existence, his crucifixion, and his familial ties. Tacitus 56 AD to 120 AD. Cornelius Tacitus was a Roman senator and historian, whose annals written in 116 AD provide a valuable Roman perspective on the early Christians and their founder. Nero fastened the guilt of the fire of Rome and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians by the populace. Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilatus. Tacitus' reference is notable for several reasons. It independently confirms that Jesus referred to as Christus was executed by Pontius Pilate. It shows that a distinct group called Christians already existed by the mid-1st century. Tacitus expresses disdain for Christians, suggesting his report is not biased in their favor. Scholars value this passage highly because it aligns with the Gospel accounts and reflects how Roman authorities viewed Christianity as a potentially dangerous superstition. Pliny the Younger, 61 AD to 113 AD. Pliny the Younger, governor of Bithynia in modern Turkey, wrote to Emperor Trajan around 112 AD, seeking guidance on how to deal with Christians. His letter 10.96 provides insight into early Christian worship. They affirmed, however, the whole of their guilt, or their error, was that they were in the habit of meeting on a certain fixed day before it was light, when they sang in alternate verses a hymn to Christ, as to a God, and bound themselves by a solemn oath, not to any wicked deeds. This letter demonstrates several things. Christ was worshipped as a divine figure. Christians gathered regularly and practiced ethical discipline. Roman officials were uncertain about how to legally handle Christian communities. Pliny's writings offer a window into how early Christians behaved and were perceived by the state. Suetonius 69 AD after 122 AD. In his biography of Emperor Claudius, Suetonius writes, "Since the Jews constantly made disturbances at the instigation of Chrestus, he expelled them from Rome." Life of Claudius 25.4. Though Chrestus may be a misspelling of Christus, scholars debate whether this refers directly to Jesus. Nonetheless, it may reflect early Christian preaching within Jewish communities in Rome, which led to social unrest and imperial action. Lucian of Samosata 125 AD after 180 AD. Lucian was a satirist who mocked many religions, including Christianity. In the Passing of Peregrinus, he refers to Christians as worshipping a man to this day, the distinguished personage who introduced their novel rites, and was crucified on that account. While clearly contemptuous, Lucian offers independent evidence of Jesus' crucifixion, the devotion of his followers, and the spread of Christianity. Celsus, 2nd century AD. Celsus, a Greek philosopher, wrote the True Word around 175 AD, attacking Christianity on philosophical and social grounds. Though the original text is lost, Origen quotes extensively from it in his rebuttal contra Celsum. Celsus argued, Jesus was born of a poor woman and a Roman soldier named Panthera. Jesus' miracles were mere magic tricks. Christians distorted his life story and lacked intellectual rigor. While hostile, Celsus' arguments show that Jesus was widely known and debated in pagan intellectual circles. Mara bar Serapion, late 1st to 3rd century AD. A Stoic philosopher, Mara bar Serapion wrote a letter to his son from prison. What advantage did the Jews gain from executing their wise king? It was just after that their kingdom was abolished. Although not explicitly mentioning Jesus, the timing, description, and context suggest it may refer to him. The letter equates Jesus with Socrates and Pythagoras, elevating him as a martyr for wisdom. Thallus and Phlegon 1st–2nd century AD. Both Thallus and Phlegon are cited by later Christian writers as having recorded unusual events surrounding Jesus' death. Thallus, according to Julius Africanus, wrote of a great darkness at the time of the crucifixion, which he explained as a solar eclipse. Phlegon, mentioned by Origen and Eusebius, also spoke of an eclipse and earthquake in 33 AD. Although fragmentary and secondhand, these references show that some ancient historians noted cosmic phenomena during the time of Jesus' crucifixion. The Babylonian Talmud compiled 3rd–5th century AD. The Talmud contains scattered references to Jesus, Yeshu, including this from Sanhedrin 43. On the eve of Passover, Yeshu was hanged. For 40 days before the execution took place, a herald cried, "He is going to be stoned," because he has practiced sorcery and enticed Israel to apostasy. While written centuries later and clearly polemical, the Talmud confirms that Jesus was executed and viewed as a controversial figure who led others astray, even accused of sorcery, which ironically echoes gospel claims that his miracles were contested. Alexamenos graffito. Discovered on the Palatine Hill in Rome, this 2nd century graffiti shows a man worshipping a crucified figure with a donkey head. The inscription reads, "Alexamenos worships his God." This irreverent depiction is one of the earliest archaeological proofs of how Romans mocked Christians for worshipping a crucified deity. Christian symbols in Rome's catacombs include the fish ichthys chi rho, anchor, and images of Jesus as the Good Shepherd. These symbols reflect key Christian beliefs. Fish, acrostic for Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. Anchor, hope and steadfastness. Good Shepherd, Jesus' care and protection. These early artworks illustrate how Christians communicated their faith in secret and revered Jesus long before Christianity was legalized. Extrabiblical sources, though varied in tone and content, provide invaluable historical context for Jesus of Nazareth. They affirm his existence, crucifixion, and the rapid rise of his following across diverse regions. From Josephus, sober reports to Lucian's satire, from hostile Talmudic mentions to defiant Roman graffiti, these accounts show that Jesus was more than a myth, he was a figure who left an indelible mark on ancient society. Even skeptics and critics recognized the power of his message and the commitment of his followers. These sources enrich our understanding of Jesus by placing him in the broader fabric of ancient history and culture.